How to go from this to this in 5 easy steps. Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well, and let's get into this Photoshop render elevation. Alright, so step 1, selecting your view. So you want to open either your Rhino, Revit, or SketchUp and get the elevation that you want to choose. So in my case, I would really want to represent the triangular balconies that are on my team's project. So first step we're going to do is just really simplify the elevation itself. So I take out the handrails to make it cleaner and less crowded, and I'm going to replace these by a detail line. Now I suggest for later on in the video that you make the balcony detail line maybe a color, because this is going to help with the shadows. Now you'll see why. So you could probably choose path of travel lines in Revit, which are green. But in my case, I just chose simple gray lines and I offset them 50 millimeters from the edge so that we could have a distinction between the floor plate and the balconies. And so once I completed all of them, just to give you a little bit of context on the project. So up here we have the parapet and the handrail, which is why it's smaller than the usual floors. So then you want to export into PDF. So I named the view south elevation. And once you're done that, you're going to go ahead and turn shadows on depending on what software you're using. And we're going to export it as another PDF. In fact, we're going to need this for step number 4 to add more realism into the actual render elevation itself. And we're using PDFs for the best quality possible. So south elevation shadow. All right, step 2, textures. So I like to use Architectures as a website that has these sort of limitless textures for any types of render. So they have a variety of materials. So for our project, we have brick. So there's a lot of variety, and the one I like, let's say it's the one on the right here I'm going to choose, and you just download it and it simply goes into your downloads on your computer and you could put it in your files later on. And I'm also going to take a concrete seamless texture, which will be this one. Looks fine, so I'm going to download that as well. And then you want to get maybe some people cutouts just so that you can add some people into your render, so that way it gives a sense of scale and basically viewers could imagine themselves in the space. So this website is pretty good. You don't have to make an account or anything. You literally just click on the people and download them straight to your computer. So I'm going to choose maybe 2 more, like these 2 on the left right here. Okay, so once that's done, you could type in plant cutouts online and save them directly to your files. Make sure they're JPEG images, because I have trouble with other type of file types. As long as it's JPEG or PNG, you're good. And so that they have a white or transparent background. So I choose a variety of like 2 to 3 plants here, just to add a little bit more life into the render. And finally, you choose whatever grass texture you like. Now this is up to you. So this could work or something else. Alright, so once that's done, we could go ahead and hop into Photoshop for step 3, applying textures. So you're going to want to go ahead and open up the PDF that we exported from either Revit, Rhino, or SketchUp. And so I'm even going to bring out a little color palette that my team and I put together, just so all of our drawings, whether it's plans, elevations, sections, or perspectives, so that they all kind of have a uniformity to them. And so the first thing I'm going to do is rename the first image I put in drawing and save it right away as a Photoshop file, so that then we can make saves throughout the whole progression of this drawing. And once that's done and saved into the computer database, I'm going to go ahead and use the rectangle select tool to then fill it up with a white color, which will serve as the main background. And then I'm going to just go ahead and rename it to background. So afterwards, you want to go ahead and open up one of the textures that you saved, whether it's wood, metal, brick, or stone. So we have this brick texture that I like, and I want to make it a little more lighter, kind of like a whitish light gray. So I just basically change a couple of its properties. So I desaturated and I upped the brightness, maybe not too much, around this much for now. It works, and then I'm gonna go ahead and merge both layers, so the properties with the base layer, so then I could export it as a pattern. So here's the merging process, and then after, if you go in the edit tab and go all the way to define pattern, and you can name it, so it shows brick 1, and that does it for the pattern itself. And after closing that tab, you could basically just start selecting with your magic wand on the drawing layer, of course, where you want to apply your texture. So here I'm going to go ahead and select all the walls of the drawing, and this is basically the final result. Then I'm going to go ahead and pick pattern, hit that little arrow, and scroll all the way to the bottom to my most recent one, the brick. So from there, you could do as many things as change the angle or change the scale. And in this case, I'm trying to make it as realistic as possible. So going off the window size for reference, I'm gonna just adjust the scale, and yeah, that's about right. So once that's done, I actually just want to make it maybe a little lighter, since the overall aesthetic of the project and what my teammates and I are going for is kind of like a softer look to the eye in terms of this like pretty big imposing project in a sort of residential area. So I'm just gonna tune up the brightness a little so that it's a more to my liking, I guess you could say. And I'm just gonna merge these layers together and move on towards the windows. So here you see me with the little eye drop to select the colors. I'm sure you guys know how it works. I'm just referencing the palette that we have for the project. And I'm just gonna fill in all those windows with the same color and do the same exact thing afterwards for the movable panels, because one of the key concepts of this project is actually each individual unit could move their own semi-translucent panels in a way that they could block certain views or maybe shield their windows from the sun. So here you see me actually selecting those panels and giving them a color based off the color palette, but I'm just going to tweak it a little so that it's more pleasing for the eye. And so this is like a little time lapse of me trying it out. Afterwards, to go to the next couple steps, I'm just gonna make the canvas size a little higher so that I could fill in the underneath and make the drawing breathe a little more. So once I selected that region with the rectangle tool, well, I go ahead and fill it in with white, and I'm just gonna merge it with the background so that it could be in unison. And so there we see it. And after that, I'm just gonna go ahead and start working on the sky portion of the drawing. So here I select all the areas that I want to show, like that gap that you just saw in between both buildings, which could symbolize that we could actually pass through them, through the site itself. And for the sky, you could either put a darker sky for at night or a little lighter than that for the day, but I'm just gonna go with like a very pastel blue. All right, so moving on, now you can see the actual shape of the floor plates, and I'm gonna basically get to work on the balconies themselves, because yes, they are made of glass, but I still want to kind of give them an effect, a visual effect to the eye that they are present. So I selected all of them, and I'm gonna do the same thing, add the solid color and bring the layer all the way up to the top so that it's on top of everything. And I'm just gonna rename it for organizing purposes. Now, once that step is done, you could play around with the opacity to give the balconies a sort of presence and add to the overall richness of the drawing. Step 4, shadows. So what you want to do is select the shadow, then go on the selection tab, select similar, add the color black, Control C, Control V into your main drawing. And once you put it all the way on top, being the layer, you basically choose a reference point like that corner right there. Check if it's accurate, and it is. And then once again, you can play around with the opacity, which is our best friend in this tutorial, to reach the aesthetic that you want to create with this elevation render. And you could really see the effect that the shadow has on understanding the depth of the openings, as well as the effect that the panels have over the windows and the triangular balconies, of course. And so then I even want to add a little bit more realism to this whole elevation render. So I want to add more depth to the section in the back. Since you can't really tell at first glance, this whole kind of area which staggers like sort of a staircase, well, I'm gonna add a layer of white over it. And once that's done, I'm just gonna bring it over everything, and once again play around with the opacity. But first I'm just gonna rename it so that we know what it is for future purposes, and then kind of play around with that so you can really tell that that's in the background and it's not at the same level as the two other facades. So that works more or less, yeah. And now you can really understand that. And thus that moves us on to step 5, the final touches. So we're gonna go ahead and select the background of this image, inverse, and move that grass into the main drawing itself. So we're just gonna bring it down here and scale it to an appropriate size so that it's realistic, and then kind of select in rectangles and chop out everything that we don't really need, and make it a little bit more realistic and natural. Alright, so now I'm even gonna go ahead and copy paste the green from our color palette and adjust the grass's saturation and brightness to correspond with the whole color theme of the project itself. And then I basically just go ahead and copy paste that grass all along the boring old brick facade, which has our slope to our garage. So we're gonna spice it up later on. A variety of around 3 different types of plants, just to have a little bit of diversity in there, so it's not all like the same thing and doesn't look too placed, more kind of natural for like the green rooftops. And this one I'm just gonna size it up and bring the layer up to the top and add it in an actual plant group. So plant 1, and then Control T and shift click it down just to kind of give it some realistic proportions. And once that's into place, maybe a little bit smaller, yeah, around there is good. I just wanted to kind of bring it in back of the balcony itself, so I'm gonna bring that balcony layer all the way up to the top. So now you see it's kind of a little more faded, so that's the look we kind of want to give it. And then I'm just gonna select this with a rectangle and exit out. Alright, so once that's done, you basically just want to do the same thing with the different plants, and I added them in. And now same exact thing for the characters, the people that you want to add. So select the background, all the little nooks as well here and there, and then you just want to go in the select tab and inverse it, copy, and then afterwards paste it into the Photoshop render. So you're gonna go ahead and select subject, and with the magic wand tool, after it loads in, you could select the rest, such as this bag that we want to include in the final silhouette. So I'm just gonna click a bit here at the bottom to get the whole bag, and that's about it. So now we're gonna want to add the actual layer over the image of the woman. So we're gonna go ahead and, for this example, just use a layer of white, and you could just drag it out of position Once you do that, you could delete the original image if you like to. And then we're just gonna go ahead and rename it to person 1. So then once again, you want to repeat the process and Control T to scale the person down and Shift to keep the proportions. And I'm going to add this person actually in between the gap of both buildings to show that you could cross the site itself. So that's around the right scale, and just the foot of the person's a little impeding on the actual cut line. So I'm just gonna take that out, and we're basically gonna fake it. So I rasterize the layer and I cut the foot off. For this example, maybe it's not the best take on it, but just to show you guys how I do it, and if you want to apply this method into your own render. And then I'm just gonna even give a little outline. So I'm gonna select one of the stroke icons, and then you could actually see the little outline pop out. So if you change the opacity, then you could really see the silhouette. All right, so once that's done to your liking, you can basically repeat the process with the other characters that you downloaded off the internet. So like I said before, you could keep them as they are, or you could add a little color over them, whether it's white, blue, green, brown, however you want to go about it. All right, so the final bit of detailing that I want to add to this specific view is kind of this mural. So I found this somewhat nice pattern off the internet, and I'm gonna do like we did before for the brick and concrete textures. So I'm gonna go and edit and define it as a pattern. So I'm gonna select this off the drawing layer and add it in just as we did before. And once that's in, I'm gonna change the scale. Hold on, let me see it. Okay, perfect. We see it now. So it kind of looks a little unnatural at the moment. So maybe I'm gonna play around with the angle and make it look a little more realistic, like a mural that an artist painted, because one of the themes for the project itself was to involve the community into it. So it would be a sort of competition to design a mural on one of the facades of one of the two buildings. And so now with the change in opacity of the mural, you could actually see the brick in the background. However, the shadow is a little covered. So I'm just gonna go ahead and bring it all the way up. And that's about it for the Photoshop render elevation video. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to put them down below. And on that note, have a nice day. Bye bye.